Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. Recently, I've been doing these episodes on Saturdays, but I'm having trouble finding enough topics to fill the rest of the day, so I'm going to do an extra episode of Let's Talk Ray Bradbury here for you on your Thursday. Let's Talk Ray Bradbury is the show where I am slowly, methodically, over several years, many years really, trying to review each of the roughly 600 short stories by Ray Bradbury. Today I'm continuing my exploration of one of his latter-day collections, which was released in the last decade before his death. And that collection is the Cat's Pajamas stories. Today's story is We'll All Just Act Natural, which was originally written in 1948 or 49, but not published until this collection in 2004. The way that these reviews work is I do a synopsis of what happens in the story, and then at the end just sort of share my thoughts and things about what it all means to me. I don't do these for any other reason than my own gratification, but I hope that some of you will find these stories enjoying and hopefully find these videos a little bit enlightening perhaps, or help you perhaps if you are doing maybe an assignment at school or something like that. So, a black woman named Susan and her daughter Linda are at Susan's home. It's on a hill overlooking a town and a train station, and she's waiting for the arrival of an old friend. That old friend is Richard Borden, who is a boy that she once cared for some 15 years ago, but he's since moved on to Hollywood. He's become a writer, and he recently sent her a book with an autograph and a message and told her that he was going to stop in and visit her for the first time in many years tonight on the train. Linda constantly teases Susan as she grows more eager for his arrival, asking him, what are you going to do when he visits? And he opens that door. He's not a little boy anymore. You can't pick him up and hug him. You can't put him up on your shoulders. But are you going to take this boy or this man? Are you going to hug him, squeeze him, kiss him? And the important factor here, in the 40s at least, was that this boy, or this former boy, Richard, was in fact a full-grown white man now, and she is a little old black lady. This story would land differently in the 40s, obviously. The train pulls in. Richard is expected at any moment, but where is he? Susan's imagination begins to wander. First, she suggests that, he's got busy on the dining car. He's having drinks with his friends. He'll be along shortly. And then she sees a yellow cab go by the house, thinking, yes, he's coming now. He's going to be in the cab. The cab's going to stop, but the cab goes on by. And then finally, she sort of downgrades her expectations, suggesting maybe he got sick and didn't make the train at all, and he'll call. Eventually, getting tired of waiting, Linda leaves and goes home. Shortly after, the train pulls out, and there's still no sign of Richard. At last, the phone rings. Reluctantly, Susan picks it up after several rings. Linda, out of compassion for her mother, says that, hey, Richard was just here. He laughed. He's a wonderful person. We told great stories. He gave me a $10 bill, and then he had to be back on the train before it pulled out, so he couldn't make it to see you, but he's sorry, but he's doing very well. And Susan remarks that, yes, he's grown up to be a real gentleman. So this story is semi-autobiographical. Bradbury had a housekeeper who helped raise him in the 30s when his family lived in Illinois. But the Depression hit, his family moved to California for work, and obviously she couldn't come with him. At one point as a boy still, Bradbury wrote her a letter and said, I wish you could come here and work, be with us again. And of course his family could not afford it. It was the middle of the Depression. But Bradbury, he often thought about her and sort of the impact that he had on her life, and she was a very important figure in his upbringing. So that was the impetus for the story. The one element here, which is sort of hinted at, is the race thing. More from Linda, the daughter, than from the mother, and we get, of course, nothing from Richard other than his short note about, I'm coming to visit you. And of course he did send a copy of his book. So there's no indication that there's any racial tension between the two of them. And I like that. He grew up with this woman raising him, and he saw her as just the same as everyone else. And that's how kids are before adults teach them how to hate. So I like that it's not a big issue here. Beyond that, perhaps that is the reason why the story wasn't originally published back in the 40s. Things were different quite a bit then. But it's not really relevant to the story so much. This is really a very, very human story about how we develop bonds in our youth that we think will be unbreakable. People become the most important people to our life, and we can't imagine a world where they're not in our lives. And then we sometimes, some of us at least, have a longing to reconnect with these people, but sometimes we just can't manage to pull it off. So it's very relatable in that sense. It's sad that they don't reconnect. It's sad that Susan is on the verge of heartbreak, but it's also there's a sense of compassion where her daughter does her best to console her and sort of tells her this lie, and they sort of act natural about it and sort of pretend like nothing's happened. That's how it's sort of a coping mechanism and how people learn to endure these heartaches. I'm 42. There are people in my life, or were people in my life, who have come and gone. Some by my choice at the time when I was going through things, some at their choice, sometimes just by the sheer weight of life and how that works and how we sort of move away and have other obligations and things like that. I wonder, on occasion, do they still think about me? Because I think about a lot of these people daily. There have been occasions where I have not always in the best state of mind, but I've tried to reconnect with some of these people, have reconnected briefly, but not having sort of any meetups. Over social media back in the day, maybe phone calls, but nothing really came of it. And I've wondered at the fact that many of these people haven't even tried to reciprocate, that I can tell. What does that say about me? What does it say about them? Of course, I'm the type of personality where I tend to blame myself most of the time. So I wonder, what type of terrible person was I? But at the same time, there's also feelings that I know some of these people have wronged me, and that was the cause of my behavior towards them. So it's all very, very confusing. But then there's my mother, which is an interesting story. Like Susan, she's getting up on years. She's soon be in her 70s. In recent years, I've seen her reach out to old friends and family members, and I've watched sort of these days of disappointment where, like, you try to set up this get together and one of them always something goes wrong, or there's always some reason why they can't come, and that was heartbreaking to watch. But luckily, all of these people have since sort of made the time, and they've reconnected and had multiple visits together, which I think is great. So it's there is hope for me in a couple of decades, I guess, but we shall see. Overall, I would say that this is the most simple of the stories so far in the collection. There have been multiple stories in the collection about politics, and also multiple stories now about race. And all that said, I think it's the best story. It's the most human story. It's the most well-executed story. It sort of skirts around the edges of issues without shoving them down your throat. And there's a lot of subtlety, and it just works. And this is a story that, unfortunately, having been published so late in his career, I don't think a lot of people know it. Just, sort of diehard Bradbury fans who have, done what I have done and try to ingest all of his collections. And that's unfortunate, because it's a really, really good story. I think that can help illuminate something about themselves to a lot of people as they deal with sort of these thoughts of regret and looking back and sort of wondering, where have these people gone, and, how did our lives change, and why did this happen? How could it be that somebody who was so important to me, in this case, perhaps can't make the time for her? But we don't know that, which is also part of the appeal of the story. There's that ambiguity where we don't know. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he missed the train. Maybe the next day after the page ends, maybe she gets a call or a letter and sort of explains the issue, and maybe inevitably they will meet up again. We will never know, but I like to think that they did eventually reconnect, because they were obviously very, very important to one another. All right then, moving on next time, which will probably be Saturday. The next story is Ole Orozco Siqueiros C, written in 2003 and 2004, which means it was written especially at the time of this collection's publication. So be sure to subscribe and tune in for that broadcast. It's not broadcast, it's not going to be live. That upload in a few days. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you again